everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk. Um, this is our Health Pros Live edition, and I love that we provide this opportunity to all of our clients because one of the things that was so powerful to me coming into this was the strong influence that healthcare professionals and the science in the program that we are offering. So, my name is Dr. Mike Mills, and I have been a practicing chiropractor for 25 years. I have been a certified wellness practitioner for about 15 and a certified Optavia health coach for the last 7 years. And what we like to do on the Health Pros Live is just take questions that we're receiving and offer you a perspective as a healthcare professional on how that relates to our Habits of Health system and your metabolic reset and your metabolic health and how we can help you in achieving your goals. Because really we're all here not because we really said, hey, I want to improve my metabolic health, but because some aspect of metabolic dysfunction was disrupting our life, our energy, our sleep, our mental clarity, brain fog, cravings, excess weight, maybe actual metabolic dysfunction of diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, low HDL, all of those things that show up. So I have the blessing of guiding us through this call tonight with two amazing nurses and healthcare professionals. Julie, I have known for a long time. She has an amazing story. She worked in really areas of nursing around diabetes most of her career, but she saw the side of this that I don't think we often think about. She spent a lot of time in wound care and the consequences of diabetes, how that affects our healing, our circulation, surgeries, and all the end results of high blood sugar, high insulin, and the detrimental effects that has on our body. And Jess is a nurse as well, and she spent a lot of time in pediatrics. And one of the things that's changing in the pediatrics field right now is that we are seeing metabolic dysfunction showing up in our pediatric population. Things that were once considered adult conditions, right? Like obviously type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes. Well, we had to change the name because it wasn't adult onset anymore to type 2 diabetes, right? But we're also seeing high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, and a little over 30% of our adolescents now experiencing um, overweight or obese conditions. So, thank you so much, ladies, for joining us here tonight. And one of the ways I like to open up, as we get some questions in the chat and get things going, is, really as a healthcare professional, maybe just in a couple minutes, you can just share what attracted you to the Habits of Health system and our metabolic reset program. Go ahead, Julie, you go first.
Okay, well, I was introduced to this by a friend, and I was in a really bad place with my own health. And I was really someone who had dieted my whole life, but what I loved about this was number one, Dr. A and the tools that he provided, and it was science, and I couldn't argue the science. Everything else I had done out there was either a fad or was some kind of crazy harebrained scheme. This was actually based in science. And as a healthcare provider, you can't argue with the science part of it. And so that's really what made me look deeper. And I was really impressed with what I saw and the validity of what this program had to offer.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
really connect with that, Julie. I'm sorry, Jess, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, for me, I had just come out of having a pretty intense back surgery, and I was not a chronic dieter, but I was a chronic person that tried to outrun their fork. I would work out like crazy, to make the calorie, math equation work out. And I couldn't do that anymore. And so I did my own due diligence and research and tried to figure out like what was the best nutrition plan,
Mhm.
because exercise was off the table. And then just seeing the amount of just the clinical studies that had been done and seeing the proof. Because if I don't understand a why things work, I'm probably not going to do it. I think people will like, you have to explain the why to a nurse, or we are going to just be stubborn and not do it. And having an entire system, really, I felt like I was going to be set up and supported for success, because doing it on my own was clearly not working.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, and um, I was inspired and motivated by the same things. You know, most people when they write a health book, um, to a large degree, it can be an opinion piece, right? But when you look at the habits of health and you flip to the back, you can see that everything in the book is referenced. There's nothing that Dr. A shares in that book that doesn't have a reference in the back, of an actual study that was done to support why we're sharing that. And that is, why do we share that here tonight? Because we want to have people that have confidence that, yes, we voice this in human connection, and that's why a lot of people are here, but it's based in science. So, one of the questions I'm seeing, and I know that you guys have seen this a lot. We'll start with you, Julie, but people asking, do you recommend collagen for women 50 plus during and after the reset? Um, so I do hear people asking about collagen a lot. What would you have to share about that?
Well, I hear that a lot from my clients too. Either they're doing it before they come on the program or, after they're saying, do I need this? And I think it really depends on what they're doing for a source of protein, number one. But I think the misconception that I've seen with a lot of people, especially with so much noise out there about menopause and what we need as women over a certain age, is that the misconception that by just taking collagen, you're actually putting collagen back into your body. And so they think, oh, I need collagen, so let me take this collagen supplement. But they don't really understand that it's like, we've talked about, it's not necessarily a complete protein, and they're not getting what they think they are and how much is actually, that their body can use. And so I think, it really depends what they're taking and why they're taking it, and to really look at that. And that's something, maybe work with your health coach. It depends where you are in the three phases that we have of the program, whether you're in the reset, in the renew, or the refine. And it really depends on what your health goals are as to, do you need it?
Yeah.
Don't just take it because you think you do.
Yeah, I love that. And from a metabolic health standpoint, one of the things we're really focused on is protecting muscle, right? Preserving lean mass, right? And creating muscle protein synthesis events. And collagen is not a source for that, right? It's not a complete protein. It doesn't substitute things like whey protein or amino acids. It has a different function. If it is something you're looking at taking, look at the guidelines for a condiment or an optional snack, right? And make sure that, it would fit into those and count it as that, right? As part of your plan. So that's great. Thank you so much, Julie. So another one that we can get, Jess, is related to constipation, right?
Mm.
I'm experiencing some constipation. What can I do to combat this? What kind of advice do you offer as a registered nurse?
Yeah, it's I get this a lot, especially I think as your body is adjusting to your new system that we're working in, right? And one of the things that we have to kind of wrap our minds around, I believe, is that you're taking less in, and so less is going to come out. Like, is it truly constipation, right? Like, is it actually constipation, or your body just has less to process? And then also really doing, you can do this for yourself, or you can reach out to your health coach and say, can we just do a little bit of a systems check, like making sure that you are following the program to a T. I was talking to a client last week, and we weren't quite sure why things weren't showing up as we expected. So we went through her day, like how the fuelings were going. And we especially leaned in, pun intended, with her lean and green, because some people can get a little loose with that. And her mindset was she was not doing any healthy fats in her lean and green, even though she needed them with the protein source that she had chosen, because the mindset was, if I have less fat, I will burn more fat, which is not how, that's a very diet mentality. Our body needs those things so it can feel safe to actually release the weight that we want to release. And so, really getting specific about what you're doing with your lean and green. That's why we measure, our proteins. That's why we measure our greens, our healthy fats, those condiments that you mentioned, because this is science based. And so I love the science method in the sense of A plus B equals C, right? Like that is the way that it works. It's predictable. And so if we aren't getting those results, we know something isn't being input correctly. And so if you're having constipation, maybe we're not inputting something correctly. And you're thinking, oh, I'm doing the best thing, but you've pivoted or changed the plan slightly. So making sure that you look in, also a huge thing is hydration, making sure you are hydrated. Maybe your body needs a little bit more than 64 ounces, which is kind of our recommended baseline. But if you're not getting enough water, it's not going to move through the way that it should. So those are the two main things that I would definitely recommend. And stay really close to your coach. Like, we're not like the babysitter that's gonna like, hey, did you? But when you are not getting the results you're expecting, or you're feeling something that doesn't feel normal, that's why you have a coach to reach out to and to say, hey, can you help me figure this out? Because as nurses, like we said, we love science. We love knowing, if I put this in, this is what's going to come out, and we can figure it out together.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
we're all about I-N-O,
Yes, I
intake and
know.
output.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And so for, let's say someone does a system check, maybe Julie, you could step in with this. And what are maybe some additional recommendations? Like for myself, I might recommend some additional magnesium supplement for somebody if I feel like, they are having a challenge there. And when would I notify, if you haven't gone have a bowel movement in a few days, let your coach know, right? Like make sure you're on the same page. Or if you're having some bloating or cramping or indigestion or something like that, make sure you identify that to your coach so that you guys can be working together on that. Do you make any additional recommendations for people, Julie, if it is legitimately a constipation issue that needs some support?
Absolutely. And I tell people, it doesn't have to be something that is like I think with as a nurse, it's least invasive to most invasive. And so the first thing I always say is I always check their hydration, which is such a key factor, like Jess was saying, but also using things like stool softener. Maybe it's that you aren't getting enough hydration, maybe it's something else going on, maybe you are having a harder stool, and it's like I think, as nurses, we're so caught up in what the consistency of stool is. And some people sometimes have a misconception, the difference between a smaller bowel movement and being constipated. Is it true constipation? Number one. What's the consistency of? Because if it's hard to pass and dry, that's constipation versus having stool that's small or you just aren't going more frequent. I often tell them try a stool softener if it is harder, increase your hydration, but also you can use things like Senecot or a Senecot tea, like Smooth Move. That's what it was there for. It's made from a senna leaf. It's not a laxative. It's just going to help produce a stool usually within 24 hours. And it's not going to be something you're running to the bathroom for. It's just going to help your body's rhythm, especially if you're brand new to a reset. Your body's getting used to now a different food source, different type of food. You're not eating as much, maybe fast food or fried food. And so there's less that your body is actually producing as waste, less food going in that's not wasted is not coming out as waste. When your body is utilizing all the nutrition that you're eating, you have far less output, and that's normal because, your body's now utilizing your stored fat as a fuel source, and so there's less waste there. So it is common to have less frequent, less quantity of stool. So it
Yeah.
may not be a problem.
Yeah, excellent. And this is a true part of health, right? Is elimination, right? And so it is a good thing to discuss with your coach. So, all right. So one of the things that I think this is great is a question about exercise for folks in their 60s and 70s. What do we recommend? But I think even in a broader sense, we can approach the subject of moving our body and exercise. I have heard people say that you can't exercise on the initial reset, which isn't really accurate, right? And so, Jess, you want to start us
Yeah,
off?
I actually was hoping I was going to start with this question because I know you're not supposed to ever ask a woman her age. But I am excited that I just turned 40, so just this month. But what's interesting about this question is exercise that is in their 60s and 70s. So I also am a cancer survivor. And so my body has gone through a lot of changes. And I had the privilege to do a program through our local Y, and it tested my strength. And I was quite devastated by the results because it told me, especially my lower body, was the average of a 93-year-old. And I was like, is that true? And it really was. But I think the best exercise is one that you enjoy, because that means that you are going to keep doing it. And so with this program that I did through the Y, I got to do some cardio drumming, which I had never experienced before. I did a TRX resistance training. I did some weight training, and I kept going because I enjoyed it. And so I would say try a few different things. Like, we know resistance training and adding weights is big because our muscles help protect our bones, right? And as we increase, you guys can help remind me the exact statistic of how much decreases each decade. There's a statistic
3
out there that
8% of your lean muscle every decade after the age of 30.
I knew you'd have it for me, Julie. And so we want to protect our muscles. So you're going to want to put in some resistance training, like make those muscles work. Another thing that is huge, which I think is so underrated, is walking, getting in walking. And for me, um, I have a lot of nerve damage to my lower body. So my goal is not your goal. So, like, don't look
Right.
at what like the gold standard is and be like, I must be there, but look
Mm,
at what you're currently doing and see what you can add to it that might stretch you but doesn't feel impossible. Because
right.
if something feels impossible, you're not going to show up for yourself for it. But if something makes you stretch a little bit, that's where you're going to gain your strength. But one of the things you mentioned at the beginning of the call is working in pediatrics. I'm all about the fun. Like, let's make this enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so, whether you're 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s, whatever exercise you pick, make sure you're having fun with it, because then you're going to really get benefit from it than like drudging it and like hating it. And then if the weather's bad, you're not going to go, because then, the obstacle has happened and I'm just going to sit on the couch. So make sure it's enjoyable, first and foremost, and then try a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I love that. And it's not a one size fits all, right? Like everybody, and so start where you are, right? I have a client right now that he started and he was using a walker and half in a wheelchair, right? Now, over a year later, he's in a gym, but we didn't start in a gym, right? You can start with standing and holding onto the back of a chair and just, squatting up and down. It can start with wall push-ups. So in the Habits of Health system, Dr. A takes us through the process of NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, a lot of what Jess was just talking about, right? Just adding activity to our life. Maybe it's that, I don't know. Every time I go up the steps, I just do it twice just to get in an extra round, right? Something, and I think there's also this thought that it has to be this formal thing where I go to some place and I do this structured thing for 30 or 40. It doesn't have to be that. We know that short intervals of activity spaced throughout the day have a significant input. So sometimes our brain can say, well, 3 minutes of doing something doesn't have value. No, 3 minutes of doing something has massive value. And if you do 3 minutes 4 times a day, right? Now we've done, almost 15 minutes of activity. And because it's spaced throughout the day, it actually has a greater benefit than, just doing everything at one time. So I love that, Jess. That's great. Go, Joel, you want to add something
Yeah, I
there?
was just gonna say, for me, and I guess, with just, explaining like where she's at, I'm 55 years old and I'm in a different place. I had a cervical spinal cord injury in 2014, and I used to be an avid runner and I couldn't run anymore. I was always trying to outrun my fork, like Jess had said in the beginning of the call. But what I do know, like you said, give value to walking. When I started this health journey, I literally could only walk. And that's the only exercise I was able to do to a certain extent. But then, for 10 years now, I've practiced yoga. And that's something when people go, oh, I could never do the poses. And really, what I tell people all the time, now I'm a certified yoga teacher. It's not about the poses. It's about the meditation. It's about the space you hold for yourself. It's connecting your body to your breath. And the beautiful thing is there's something called chair yoga. A lot of my older clients that are unable to get down on the floor, that are in their 80s, 90s, sitting in a chair and still being able to do stretching really keeps us pliable. And that's really, if we bend, we don't break. And really, what that is doing what you can from the point you're at, not where you expect to be. And what I tell everybody I practice yoga with is the day I'm on my mat is the practice I have. It's not going to be like it was yesterday or what I'm going to be a year from now. It's how I'm practicing in the present. And if you're doing something that moves your body, like Jess said, that feels good, that's the exercise you should be doing. And then adding to it everything I do now, I enjoy because, like you said, Mike, oh, I'm not going to do that for 3 minutes. I was an all or nothing kind of girl. If I couldn't do an exercise for an hour, I wasn't doing it at all. And then I didn't do it. But when I found things I could do for 5, 10, 15 minutes and they added up, everything adds up and it adds value to us, especially if you enjoy doing it. So
I love that.
find something, yeah, that you love and then just do
I'm
that.
gonna just interject one other thing in there because there's power of people around you. And so when you walk, don't walk alone. Like even if it's just one buddy, and or if you want to try a new thing, but you're scared to try it by yourself, convince your friend. I'll be like, hey, come try this new class out with me. Like, because there is so much power in community. There's so much power in doing it with someone else. And so, find the people that you enjoy being around and then, bring them with you. I mean, you just, why are people like, we talked earlier about just like trusting nurses, right? And what we have to say. And, but I'm not in your home, but someone else is. And so like bringing those people along and telling them like, hey, I want to do this. Like it's just going to bring a level of accountability to you actually doing it because sometimes it's not the knowledge of what the best exercise is for those folks. It's like, am I afraid to actually try to do an exercise? So bringing a buddy can sometimes help decrease that fear.
I love that. That's beautiful. And one thing, Julie, I'd just like you to share because everybody just heard you say that you're now a yoga instructor, but and they see you in this healthier state. But when Julie started, you were how many pounds heavier than you are right now?
120.
So that was So you can say, well, I don't relate to that. Well, Julie 120 pounds ago was not relating to being a yoga instructor. Trust me. That was not what, if you'd have said, what am I going to be someday? That
That was
wasn't
not
it.
it.
It's the power of what happens when you start to transform your life and you get into this community and you start to feel good and your metabolic health is online and you have energy, right? It just affects our body to a cellular level. And so I just think to bring that into perspective, like I sit here knowing when Julie says that, oh my gosh, like I know where she started, right? But if you didn't know that, I think it just brings more power to what you shared. So there's a question in here about amino acids. We get this a lot. Whoever wants to take this can, but I'm not exercising yet. Should I be taking amino acids?
Oh, great question. I'll throw my hat in that arena because when the aminos came out, I was really excited about that. When I was a runner, I used to use a BCAA. So I knew that there was a lot of value in it, but everyone's like, but I don't exercise. That's okay. The thing is, what I love about the EAAs is when you combine it with the right protein, the synergistic effect that it has, you don't have to be exercising for them to work. They have to be combined with the protein in your food to create muscle protein synthesis. And when people ask me, well, what is muscle protein synthesis? The best way I can describe it is it's the building blocks of protein. It is literally the repair system in action. And you don't have to be tearing down muscle in order to rebuild it. You do want to have the EAAs. Number one, we're always stressing our bones and our muscles in some way. And the EAAs, even if you're not exercising, taking it once a day, the added benefit that when it combines with the protein in our food that we get, every client I have will tell you that is something I will recommend to them. And when you do start exercising, on the days you exercise, you take it twice. But it doesn't need to be that you have to exercise to take it. It has such great benefits.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Just the fact of, especially the formulation that we have, there's certain criteria that have to be met in order for it to create a muscle protein synthesis. So the word synthesis means like we synthesize something, we make something, right? So this is synthesizing, right? It's stimulating within the body this muscle protein making effect simply from drinking that concentration of leucine in that amount of time in that ratio. So, yes, there's massive benefit to everybody. And just to stay on time here, there's one more question in here. And we talked about this briefly as we were prepping for tonight, but um, one of the reasons that I know we all talked about choosing this program is because it was a three-phase approach, right? That there's so many short-term quick fixes out there. Jess, I know we talked about that. Um, and that was an area that you said that was important to me, right?
Hmm.
So maybe answering that question, that person says, well, what happens after the reset? Or, I'm concerned about after the reset. What's going to happen?
Yes, I love that because I am working actually with a client right now who's getting ready to transition out of reset into renew. And then, we'll build her through to refine. And it is something that Julie, we learn things in nursing school, right? Like we learn things in school and kind of reset, I feel like is kind of like school. And then renew is when you're like first year nursing, like you're applying, you're learning, you're like figuring it out with these tools that you got in school. And then refine is when other nurses come up to you and they're like, hey, you've been working here a while. How does this part work? And that's the system that we build. We give you tools so that you're constantly learning and
Mhm.
like becoming more efficient at knowing the right choice, being able to build your lean and greens so that you're having them throughout the day. Because I know when I first started, I was not someone that ate 6 times a day. But then I realized that was a habit that was going to stay with me forever. So there's parts that of reset that go through with you, but we don't just like wash our hands once you hit that goal and let you fly free. We reference the tools and then we keep building to what your next goals are. So there's not like a finish line. It's truly a journey that we go through.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, this has been great tonight, guys. And everything that Jess said was exactly right on. I just want to make one little enhancement is that it's reset, refine, then renew, right? So just the
Oh
order
man.
we need to be, but it's okay. So, and yes, as a healthcare professional, that's what we were saying is that we wanted someone that was going to take them from where they were and help them move the whole way through the process to creating the lifestyle that's sustainable. And that's what we have in this process. So awesome, guys. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you guys were all able to join us tonight. I know this will bring massive value to everybody. And the exciting thing is, we will be back next week with another episode of Let's Talk. And we will be talking about life beyond the reset, what reset, refine, renew looks like. Because I just think when you learn about this, even if you're brand new and you're saying today's my day one and next week's about the next phases, when you see that there is a system and a process and a predictable path to you creating long-term sustainable results forever, it builds confidence in what you're doing. So we'll see you next week. Remember, all of these are on our YouTube channel. Make sure you have that. And they're on Spotify and podcasts, so you can listen to them there. Thanks again, Jess, Julie. Honored to do this with you guys tonight. We'll see you all again next week for another episode of Let's Talk.